If you're in your late 30s or early 40s and feel like you're failing at life and should be further ahead by now, this episode's for you. What you're actually experiencing is your old identity has stopped working, and the way you measure your life needs to change. I'm Nick Brax, and this is Move Your Mind, where we help you change your life by changing your mind. Today I'm joined by John Broadbent, who's spent decades of his life working with men at this exact stage of life. This episode will help you change your life by understanding why feeling like you're failing at 40 is a necessary part of transitioning into the next stage of life. I've enjoyed my 30s a lot more, but I've found the last couple of years really challenging because it's confusing. It's like, okay, I'm 38. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? I'm still working stuff out. I'm not, I've got an amazing partner. I'm not married yet. I live in New York now. All my core group of friends live in different countries. Certain things that I wanted, I still want, but I'm not as attached to the way that I wanted them, but I still am in a way. So there's confusion about what do I actually want in certain areas, because you're not sort of, wanting as much of the stuff that the ego drove you for, but you're still trying to find, but I still do want it. So it's very confusing.
The reason it happens around that age is that what men don't understand is that up until that time, we have been building an identity. There are books like Ryan Holiday that says ego's the enemy and stuff like that. I don't believe that. My view is that our ego is a necessary vehicle and our identity that helps us get shit done.
Oh, absolutely.
People can have, men, for example, can have what I call a small ego or a weak ego, which is the person that doesn't light up the room. You don't even feel their presence. They've got, the wet fish handshake. There's just nothing about them that you want to engage with. The other is the big ego, the chest beating, look at me, I'm the greatest, at the expense of everybody else. And ironically, they're flip sides of the same coin because they're both driven by a lack of self-esteem and self-worth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas a strong ego is a person who knows who they are, has good boundaries, can agree to disagree, doesn't need to get derailed, isn't dogmatic, can apologize, all those sorts of really wonderful attributes. And someone who meets a leader who has a strong ego will probably follow them because there's something about them that they want. So for the first half of our life as men, it's our development of our ego, our hero archetype, which is what drives us to get shit done. During midlife, we're asked, without even realizing it, to let go of the hero and move into the latter half of life, which is our soul work, which is where our legacy will be left. And it's that significant tectonic shift in our relationship with our ego from initially our master to then our servant. And it's the battle to put our ego in its appropriate place within us so that we can call on it when we need it, but it's no longer driving the bus.
Can you give, just so we can learn a little bit more about you, a bit of a background on yourself and the work you do?
Sure. I guess what kicked me off on this journey was in the early 90s in Australia, the recession Australia had to have. I was involved in a manufacturing business. Interest rates went through the roof here. I think you probably don't remember, but I think mortgages were 14%. Bank loans were around 18%, and because we had a high debt to equity ratio, we were sitting at around 23%, and that made us non-viable. Eventually, the business went under. I owned my house at that stage of my life. I'd done well, and the bank came and took the business, took the house, took my life savings, and that was the end of my 17-year relationship with my high school sweetheart, my first marriage. So I was effectively stripped bare, and the sense of, I think, catastrophic failure that society had told me I needed all these trappings to be of value, all that was stripped away, and all I was left with was me. And suicide ideation obviously became a part of my considerations during that time because the sense of failure was so debilitating. And thankfully I found experiential psychotherapy sort of drag kicking and screaming into it with really only two choices, that or the other. And I discovered that what I'd been through, I couldn't play the victim card, and I was responsible for everything that had happened for me in that situation. So it really forced me to grow up, I guess, quite quickly and mature within myself. So that was, I guess you'd call it the beginning of my awakening. And that was when I started my personal development journey. And ever since then, I've been highly focused on becoming a better human being, every step of the way through courses, reading, experiential stuff, traveling, and then became a dad in 2002 to my first son, and then 2008 to my second son. And by then I'd sort of been actively involved in, men's groups, but I called it a light touch. Published a book called Man Unplugged, Exploring the Inner Man in 2014, which was a bit of an allegorical journey about my own spiritual development during that time. Men, we don't talk enough about what's happening for us by design. So then if we find a path through a difficult part of our life, we inadvertently keep it to ourselves, so we keep it a secret, thinking that no one else needs to know because they're not going through anything, because they're not talking about it. So we then just perpetuate the whole myth, and then we've got this amazing amount of collective wisdom that we don't share.
Absolutely.
So the whole idea of the book is to encourage men to read the book, to understand they're not Robinson Crusoe, that we all come and sort of stand on common ground. And as a result of that, if we became more vocal in sharing what's happening for us, we'd suddenly realise we're not Robinson Crusoe. Not only can we help ourselves, but we can then help other men.
Absolutely. I think, that's such an important message, mate. It really is. And I mean, that's what, when I fell into working in mental health at the beginning, all I was doing was standing up and just sharing my story. And I think that's what I learned through it. I was like terrified to do it. Like you're saying there, you tell yourself, there's something fucking wrong with me. I'm fucked up. I've got something broken inside of me. Why does everyone else cope so much better than I do?
Yeah.
And then you go and speak and you hear all these people, and it's like people are just like, there's this sigh of relief that, oh my God, you've given me permission. Maybe it's okay.
I realised that in that last decade, I'd been through the death of both parents. I'd been through a divorce and a marriage. I'd been a parent for an extra 10 years through teenagehood, which was fun within itself. I had done a lot more work for myself. I'd done a lot more personal development in the space of myself and other men. And then I'd been, attending men's groups and gatherings and running my own retreats as well during that time. So I felt I had a lot more wisdom to offer the book. But when I then started to do a bit of research around how were we going, particularly here in Australia, and started looking at the stats, one of the stats that mortified me the most was that despite all the Are You OK Day, International Men's Day, Movember, and all the things that we do here in Australia, there'd been a 40% uptick in the male suicide rate in that decade. And I'm scratching my head going, well, how can that be? We've got so much more awareness. We've got, mental health is no longer considered something bad. There's lots of awareness around it. Companies are having mental health specialists in their workforce. Like, there's so much more availability, going to see psychologists, psychotherapy, psychiatrists. It's not seen what it was even 20 years ago. We've come a long way in that way, understanding the importance of mental health. And yet still, with all of that, what I'd call infrastructure and awareness, we've actually gone backwards.
It's bizarre. Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. And I think it's a false economy. I mean, it's great that we have come so far in how much it's talked about now, but I think that's almost dangerous in making people think that things are okay when there's behind the scenes, so much going on.
And I see things still getting worse. And part of that has been the shift in, I call it a shift in the center of gravity of gender politics, is how I put it. And as a result of that, I think men that were already, particularly young men that were already feeling somewhat disenfranchised, are now feeling more disenfranchised. I hear young men saying the women that are out there, they don't want to date. And the women saying the men that are out there, they don't want to date, that the dating pool's, getting smaller and smaller and tougher to navigate. And so sadly, both men and women are tending to either be single or settle for less than really what they deserve in terms of the quality of relationships that could, if done well, be the greatest gift of their life.
Yeah, I think, I can't remember what I was hearing, that like in whatever age group it was with men, that it was the amount that are in relationships or that had sex in a given year even was like crazy, whatever the stat was, but it's changed dramatically and people are just spending their time alone, and it's unnatural. Like we're social creatures and we need companionship.
And the hookup culture, Tinder and all that's had a lot to do with it. If you think about the way, I have another business with my wife where we actually teach couples the science and education on how to do relationships well. because we realize that when you think about the two things that lots of couples do in their life is they get into a relationship and they have children. They're the two things we get zero education on. So no wonder we don't do well. And we've discovered that about 70% of couples never talk about the quality of the relationship. 90% of couples are dissatisfied with their sexual relationship, and that's because they don't know how to communicate. And we came up with a model whereby in the old days, I'd call it, but the way that we used to date was that we would meet someone, either introduced online, whatever it was, we'd go out, we would test and measure. Do I like you? Can I trust you? Are you behaving like a sociopath or a psychopath? Are there any red flags? And what we're actually doing during that time is we're building what we call the friendship circle, which is where the concept of emotional intimacy starts, that most couples aren't aware of. That's actually what the relationship is based on. And then at some point over time, typically it used to be weeks or months, it would then become a sexual relationship. So now there's a whole new dimension to the nature of the relationship. And we're not only now exploring the friendship piece with adventures and shared experiences, we're now exploring each other's bodies and what that means for us in terms of intimacy. And if that goes well, then we decide we might want to move in together, we might want to get married, we might want to cohabitate, have kids, whatever. But now we're starting the partners circle where we're now partners in life. And so when the emotional intimacy is active in the friendship circle, when physical intimacy is active in the lover's circle, and when sort of partnership is happening in the partner circle, the teamwork is happening, and they're in harmony, or they're in balance, then the relationship is in harmony. And what happens over time is couples don't know that the emotional intimacy piece is vitally important for women, especially because women need to feel emotionally connected to their partners to want sex, and men need sex to emotionally connect with their partners. So when the emotional intimacy piece starts to wane, women tend then to be turned off the relationship. So men then try to go to the lover's circle to activate that, and that's when you have the Mexican standoff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The partner circle is getting larger and larger and larger. You've now got kids, you've now got extracurricular activities, you've now got school drop-offs, you've now got, disturbed sleep, all that stuff. So the friendship circle shrinks, the lover's circle then naturally shrinks, and before you know it, you just life partners literally living in a partnership that's all transactional.
And you can find yourself, I guess, just on a hamster wheel where you're servicing a life that you don't feel like you even want anymore.
Correct. And then we wonder why
torture.
And then we wonder why the relationship goes south. It has, by definition, when you think of it from that perspective, it has to devolve.
Yeah.
I can't do anything else. Unless you go back to the friendship circle and go, what are the things we used to do? I mean, you hear of couples who talk about date nights and they've been married for 20 years, and people on the outside can look at that and go, well, that's a bit weird. Like, it's a bit forced. It's a bit, it is, because that's what you need to do. You can't just leave your car in the garage and hope it's self-maintained. You have to force it by driving it to the service centre every 6 months, to get the oil change. The relationship's exactly the same, and that's why we called our business Retune, because it was about retune. It wasn't broken. The relationship just needs a retune by getting back and building the friendship circle, and when we do that, the lover's circle kicks back in, and when we do that, the whole three circles get back into balance.
And is there more than ever now a mindset that they're the perfect things out there? Because, you can be on all these dating apps. Okay, I've met someone on a dating app. You know what? I'm attracted to them. Got on pretty well. But I think I'll just leave that because it's probably someone better. And then you can do that over and over again and have that mindset that you're always looking for the next best thing. And then you sort of, that very way of thinking is never going to be conducive to having a deep relationship.
Well, that's just the limerence dopamine hit.
Yeah.
The in-loveness, which is surreal and unreal anyway, because all of these is a chemical cocktail of, I think it's serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin for a period of time, 6 months to 2 years. And then you fall off the wagon, you're now no longer intoxicated, and then shit gets real. And couples don't know at that point how they're going to navigate their relationship because they don't have the skills. Simple as that.
Yeah, and it's not happiness. It's interesting because I was addicted to that for sure, and I spent, my first interactions with women were drinking, one night stands, and I think I really developed a mindset where you're almost objectifying women and looking at it in looking for the next best thing. And it was really hard for me, to get out of that and to change that mindset and to have that challenge, and took a couple of relationships to really change my behavior. But it's, I guess, like I'm saying there, it feels like society's geared to push us towards that a lot of the time, more than ever in this day and age.
Well, it is, and the irony is that the external objectification is also internal. So when you're in an objectifying relationship with someone, you're actually objectifying yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. And so the friends with benefits type relationships, which I see around me and my eldest son's cohort, seem to believe that they can stop biology, in that when you are friends with the situationship, I think is the modern term. My day it was friends with benefits. I think what happens is you try and convince yourself that I'm not going to get emotionally attached. Well, guess what? When you're having sex and you're having orgasms, you can't stop the oxytocin from flowing within your system. You just can't. We don't have the power mentally to stop that from happening. So the love hormone of oxytocin continues to flow, and before you know it, you're starting to have feelings for someone that you promised yourself, I will never do that. And so, well, then what do? You then, one partner might profess their feelings, and the other partner goes, "Oh, I'm offended. I'm out of here." And I just hear that over and over and over again. And David Data, who wrote The Way of the Superior Man, wrote a wonderful, I think it's an audio book, and I think it's actually more of an interview than an actual physical book, called Enlightened Sex. And what I loved about that book, he talks about the level 1, 2, and 3 relationship. And the level 1 is either partner in a relationship, a sexual relationship, going, what's in it for me? The level 2 relationship, what's in it for us? And the level 3 relationship is, how can we make love that changes the world? We gift the world with the love that we're emanating from the act of union. Now that's pretty out there, but you can't get to the level 3 in a situationship or a one night stand. You need to have years and years and years of dedication and practice and communication and all that sort of stuff to be able to get to the depth of vulnerability that's required to have an almost transcendent experience.
So it sounds similar to our individual journeys where, in our 20s, partly in our 30s sometimes, where it's about what's in it for me, what can I get out of this, that, the other. Then you start to find a bit of your own way. And then once you get more established, it's like, how do I now give back to the world? And how do I, so it sounds like a very similar process.
Well, I have a phrase that's become a bit of a maxim for me, Nick, and it's as within, so without.
Yeah. That's nice.
And we say to couples, if your relationship's in a bit of a mess, it's the direct mirror of your relationship with yourself. Because if you're an A-grade tennis player and you come up to a C-grade tennis player, the A-grade tennis player doesn't want to play the C-grade because there's no challenge, and the C-grade doesn't want to play the A-grade because they're going to get smashed. So a good game of tennis is when two people are of similar skill, or maybe one's a little bit better. In a relationship, a person of high self-esteem will not be with a person of low self-esteem. So you will match with a person of similar levels of either self-worth or self-esteem. If you start with a low base, it can be challenging because low self-worth, self-esteem people need to be dogmatic, need to be right, can't apologize, and it's a mess, and it becomes a bit of a shit show, bickering, scoring match. And so it's incumbent on us as individuals to find our worth and our value and our esteem, and then we will, and respect for self and love for self and boundaries with self, and then we'll meet someone who will match that. So there's a great line that says, be the person you want to fall in love with.
If you're listening to this and you want to make a change in your life, but you don't know where to begin, I've created a free Move Your Mind masterclass that walks you through how to build sustainable habits and make change that really sticks. And you'll also get access to a free weekly newsletter where I post practical tools and stories that I don't share anywhere else. To watch the free masterclass, head to go.nickbrax.com/moveyourmind. That's go.nickbrax.com/moveyourmind. You can also find the link in the show notes. Yeah. And it is, all of these different sayings that are out there are so true. Like we we really are going to attract in our life a reflection of what's inside of us. And it's confusing because, and if I reflect on my own life, when I've been through those periods of whether it was relationship stuff or things in my life not going how I wanted them to go, and you're blaming it on other things, or you're feeling like, no, but it's because of this and that and blah, blah, blah. But it's funny how you really can't see it when you're in the weeds of it, but it's all to do with this. You've got to address whatever's going on inside of you before you can be a good partner or whatever it is.
And relationships and life in general, if we pay attention, will mirror that back to us.
Yeah. It's tricky. And how many people do you think get caught up in that whole lust, chasing dopamine, thinking that that's what a relationship is meant to feel like? Because I guess I'm only talking from my own experience. That's what I was really addicted to. And I was attracting, because of that, the wrong kind of women, because I would find these women. I was in the entertainment world. I'd be dating models, these different women that they'd be keeping distance and they wouldn't really treat you that well. And then to me, it felt like, okay, like this is exciting if you can win them over. And then they must be valuable if I'm having to work so hard to get them to give me attention. And then I was addicted to that with my current partner when I first met her. And it was very different, the situation as well. We met online and we were chatting for 3 months, just video calling, and got to know each other like friends, just got to know everything about each other. So it was very slow, the build.
Yes.
And early on, I kept saying to her, something's wrong. It feels too easy, because even if something's come up, we talk about it. And I'm like, it's great, but I just don't feel like excited. I'm not feeling that like adrenaline rush. And to this day, I have to keep reminding myself about that stuff, not just in relationships, in life. I've been addicted to that dopamine. But I think we obviously live in a world where it's out of control, and I see it in so many other people. I guess, the question, if I go back to it, do you see that as being a pretty common thing and a problem?
It is in younger generations because that's all they've been brought up with, and the ability to talk to someone on the other side of the world in real time, the ability to, up until a couple of years ago, go to Google and pretty well find anything you needed to find. And now, in the days of Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., and Grok, I can just about know anything and get various perspectives on research in seconds. Like, how?
Scary. It's scary. Oh my God. Like, I'm scared, like, where that's going to get to in 20 years. Like, look at where it got to this fast. Like, what the hell is going to happen?
I don't believe that technology per se is ever good or bad. I believe technology is technology, and it's up to us as to whether we use it for good or bad.
Totally.
On the back of the book, I have a symbol that I had made by a guy that I know is a graphic artist, and it's 100% HI. Because there's not a single word or paragraph in that book that came from artificial intelligence. I wrote the whole damn thing and read it multiple times to polish it. And I say in the book at the start, every single word, and I mean it, every single word in the book is considered and placed to be as inviting and as non-invasive and as inclusive as it could possibly be, while also being assertive, specifically for men's health across the board, not only mental health, but physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. Because in Australia, for example, if you go and say to Gemini, go to the Australian government and give me the budget for the last 4 budgets for women's and girls programs and men's and boys programs. And you'll see that there's been 1.3 billion for women's and girls programs in the last 4 budgets. And there's been 26 million for men and boys.
Oh my God.
And that's a 60-to-1 ratio. Now, when I raise my head above the parapet with that, the hardened feminists will come after me. And I keep saying, can we just get out of the either or conversation and have an and conversation? I am in no way ever saying or advocating for a reduction in the funding for women and girls programs. Yeah. I'm simply asking for something for the men's and boys programs, because boys are leaving school, they're not completing year 12, they're not going to university, They're dropping out of society. Dr. Warren Farrell in the US predicted 25 years ago that we were going to create a generation of unweddable and unemployable young men because of the way we were going. And now I guess the typical sort of impression is that a young man is sitting at home, playing games, watching porn and smoking dope.
Mm.
And there are a larger percentage of young men doing that now who are disenfranchised. And ironically, women are feeling the pinch of that because those men are out of the dating pool.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, and it's shocking. And you were saying before we started, I think, like, suicide rates are, what were you saying, a stat about 40%? What were you talking about there?
We used to lose on average 5 men a day to suicide in 2014, and now we lose 7 men a day to suicide in 2024, 25.
Is that Australia or globally?
Australia.
That's insane.
In the US, it's 44,000 men a year. I think it's one every 13 minutes. Like, it's a ridiculous statistic. And in the book, I've actually put a table of, I just chose, Europe, Spain, France, Scandinavia, US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada type countries, and got their stats and put them in a little table in the book. And Australia sits probably mid to slightly high. I think the number's around 14 per 100,000 population, somewhere around there. Lebanon's like 1.2, which is super low. Who knows what's happening in Lebanon? And Greenland's like 87. What the hell's happening in Greenland?
Yeah.
But the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all the Western-speaking, English-speaking countries are all very similar.
So is that maybe to do with, I mean, in Greenland, maybe it's the simplicity of life, that they just aren't, we're overstimulated, it's too much of everything. It's sickening. And I'm conscious of it, but I haven't found on a personal level a way to find balance with all of this stuff, because it's so hard when you're having, you're trying to interact with the world to pave your own way, but then it means you've got exposure to all this stuff. So then you got to find that balance, and it's really hard. It's hard not to be working 24/7, comparing yourself to other people, looking at screens all day long. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
The reason that in my view, the reason that we're having the difficulty that we're having is that we lose, under 50, we lose more men and boys to suicide than any other cause. And the 35 to 44-year age bracket is sort of peak. And my theory is the reason is that when men step into midlife at about the age of 40, 42, the magic number, meaning of life, 42, the reason it happens around that age is that what men don't understand is that up until that time, we have been building an identity. There are books like Ryan Holiday that says, ego's the enemy and stuff like that. I don't believe that. My view is that our ego is a necessary vehicle and our identity that helps us get shit done.
Oh, absolutely.
People can have, men, for example, can have what I call a small ego or a weak ego, which is the person that doesn't light up the room. You don't even feel their presence. They've got, the wet fish handshake. There's just nothing about them that you want to engage with. The other is the big ego, the chest beating, look at me, I'm the greatest, at the expense of everybody else. And ironically, they're flip sides of the same coin, because they're both driven by a lack of self-esteem and self-worth.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny.
Whereas a strong ego is a person who knows who they are, has good boundaries, can agree to disagree, doesn't easily get derailed, isn't dogmatic, can apologize, all those sorts of really wonderful attributes. And someone who meets a leader who has a strong ego will probably follow them because there's something about them that they want. So for the first half of our life as men, it's our development of our ego, our hero archetype, which is what drives us to get shit done. During midlife, we're asked, without even realizing it, to let go of the hero and move into the latter half of life, which is our soul work, which is where our legacy will be left. And it's that significant tectonic shift in our relationship with our ego from initially our master to then our servant. And it's the battle to put our ego in its appropriate place within us so that we can call on it when we need it, but it's no longer driving the bus.
I can relate to all of it. I'm 38 years old, and all the things you're talking about, I'm still. What age group were you saying was the tough period?
Around 42 as we enter into midlife for like the next 5 to 7 years. But
Is when it gets...
to 35 to 44 is the peak time for male suicide.
Okay. So the good news is it gets better. So after 44 is when you can expect it to start getting better.
If we do it well.
If we do the work. But but like with what you're talking about there, I've very publicly talked a lot about my own mental health issues, and that was a lot in my 20s, but worked on myself a lot. I've enjoyed my 30s a lot more, but I've found the last couple of years really challenging because it's confusing. It's like, okay, I'm 38. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? I'm still working stuff out. I'm not, I've got an amazing partner. I'm not married yet. I live in New York now. All my core group of friends live in different countries. Certain things that I wanted, I still want, but I'm not as attached to the way that I wanted them, but I still am in a way. So there's confusion about what do I actually want in certain areas, because you're not sort of, wanting as much of the stuff that the ego drove you for, but you're still trying to find, but I still do want it. So it's very confusing.
The question I would ask of you, Nick, is if I put you at base camp of a significant hill, K2, Annapurna, whatever, would you just turn up and start ascending, not realizing that you're ascending, and then get power out and going, how did I get here? What's happening? Or would you look at it and go, wow, I've never done this before. I wonder what it's like. I've got shorts and thongs on, but really I need to get some proper walking boots and understand and make a bit of a plan. Which one's got the better chance of success? Of course, it's the latter. So when men get to 40, 42, firstly, all we know about midlife is the banal view, it's a midlife crisis and he's going to buy himself a sports car, that sort of attitude.
Yeah.
And it's because men don't talk about what goes on for them during midlife, rather than understanding that midlife is a necessary transition and transformation, shift in the center of gravity of our ego. It's a tectonic upheaval, and it's actually asking us to go into our unresolved childhood wounds, start the healing work if we haven't started already, because if we don't do and build a relationship with the pain of those wounds, we can't get the gift behind the wound. And if we don't get the gift behind the wound, we use what remaining remnants of our ego we have to keep a lid on all this upheaval that's going on. And then we become the guy that goes and gets the big boys' toys. And, the story, the guy with the biggest toys or the most expensive toys wins. So we buy the jet boat, we buy the thing, we get a woman who's 30 years younger than us, like all those material trappings to compensate for the fact that we haven't done it on ourselves. And then we grow up into this brittle, grumpy old bastard that no one wants to be around. And we end up being lonely.
Yeah. It's, it's a miserable, and I've met a lot of those people, and you can see it's not, they're not happy. Like, it's not, well, I mean, I shouldn't be as arrogant to say that, but it feels like they're not happy. There's an emptiness there a lot of the time when people are in that. So is it, I guess if I describe, I feel like I'm doing a therapy session with you now. This is good. Just
I'll
going
speak a little later, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to keep using myself as an example because I'm fascinated, because I'm just, I'm in the middle of a lot of the stuff you're talking about. But I guess with what you're talking about there, my experience, if I look at right now, I feel two contradictory things happening where I am more clear than ever about who I am and what I want out of life. And I find that so liberating. And, I've been able to try so many different things, and it feels amazing to be like, I actually see so clearly what I want to do. I know how to do it. But at the same time, I torture myself and almost tell myself, almost take the joy out of everything, because I'm feeling like, no, but this is unacceptable because I've run out of time to have the success I want to have. I'm getting too old. If I'm not fully established, if I'm not this, I'm not that by this age, I've run out of time. And then I'm like, but it doesn't make logical sense. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but by the time I have kids and stuff like that, that's when my career's over. That's when my life's over. So I've got to do everything before that. Whereas, and even things like the acting that I've taken a big break out of, started getting back into that. And I'm like, I'm actually loving it again. I'm like, you know what? I believe down the track, I'll be able to actually do better in it. I'm excited to, but I'm like, but the only bad thing is I don't have enough time left. So I keep having these thoughts that it's just this pressure of like, I need everything. This is unacceptable to be a man if I'm not more wealthy right now and more this and more that, and ruining the experience when I'm actually, if I remove all of that, I'm happy with my life and my path. So it's this weird thing.
It's a paradox. It's a dichotomy, and you will find, if you're familiar with Richard Schwartz's internal family systems work, where we have parts of ourselves that want different things, and you explore that within yourself, you'll find there's a part of you that wants to be successful and seen and wealthy and da 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 da, and there's a part of you that might want to be a dad, and there's a part of you that wants something else, and all those parts are in conflict because they want different things. And there is a way to dialogue with those parts to find out what they really are about. And when you do that, you will learn that you don't need to satisfy all of them 100%. And the thinking that, you know, when I become a dad, my life's going to be over is not true. What will happen is one life will peter to an end to a degree, depending how much you want to maintain that, but a whole new life will begin. And that whole new life is then becoming a parent and shifting your focus. When my mother of my kids was 6 weeks pregnant, I'm in the shower doing my best thinking in the shower, and I'm having a bit of a dialogue with myself, and I'm going, you know, well, I wonder what this child is here to teach me. And I've come to learn how can I put it, words are implanted, like they don't come from me, they come from outside. And quick as a flash, this voice said, selflessness. Ain't that the truth? And what it brought out in me was a deep sense of care and protection, which I now have become a far more caring human being than I was before I became a parent. And I actually really enjoy demonstrating my care for those around me. So when I run a retreat, for example, some of the feedback that I get from the participants is they felt so cared for because everything they needed, the rooms were done, you know, food, everything, and they felt held in a really safe container, but very nurturing container because they felt cared for. That didn't come from me naturally. That came because I became a parent. So it's all about the lens through which we look at things through. And a friend of mine many years ago, a wonderful maxim he gave me, he said, it's not what we're looking at, it's where we're looking from.
Yeah.
And that been every time I look at something and I judge it or have an assessment or a belief about it, it's like, hang on, where am I looking from? I know what I'm looking at, but where am I looking from? What am I telling myself? What's my inner critic telling me? What are the beliefs and values and prejudices that I have, and what I'm looking at? Where did they come from? Are they real? Are they true?
Yeah. And then have you found that's translated into your work as you've gone through that process and sort of enriched it, I guess?
Hugely, because one of the bits of feedback, we had a closing circle on, what's today? My Thursday afternoon, on Tuesday afternoon to close out the week workshop. And some of the feedback from some of the participants was they never felt judged in what they wanted to share. And that's really important to me, because how can I sit in judgment of someone else's pain and suffering or even shame? Hello? I'm here, I've been there, I'm still doing my work too. And so that capacity to create a non-judgmental framework has turned out to be one of my superpowers, but only because I was in that situation where I was carrying shame and guilt and regret and all those things, and then had to build a frame of non-judgment towards myself, as within, so without.
To then be able to give that back. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Just hold the space for people to allow them to find their way, not to tell them how to do it, not to force them up the mountain, but to stand as a willing guide for those that say, hey, I've got a mountain in front of me. Do you have any idea how I might climb that? And you go, well, yeah, actually, don't turn up in shorts and thongs. Get yourself some good walking boots. Get a day pack, get some oxygen if you're going over 15,000 feet, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But set people up for success rather than just let them hope for the best, where some guys fall off the chessboard and take their own life.
So if you look back to, the story you were telling me when you were, how old were you? You were in your 30s?
33.
33. So you're married, you've got a career, you've got the house, and everything fell apart rapidly.
Owned my home, debt-free, living the life, had a great job, earning really good money, and then left that to form a business. And then, 3 years after that, crashed and burned at 33.
So if you look back now on that whole period, are you thankful that all happened because it actually put you on the path that you've now gone on, and it forced you to reflect on a lot of things and go down a different path?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be doing anything near what I'm doing today. I could have leveraged my house. I could have bought more real estate. I could have, could have. And talk about a sliding door moment. I can't even fathom what my life might have been like had I gone down a different path. However, I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing and feeling so enriched in my capacity to navigate life itself with far more confidence and grace. You'd have told me 20 odd years ago I'd be in Bali running a week-long retreat for a bunch of guys. I'd say, what have you been smoking? It just is no way that's going to happen.
What were you doing for work originally when that all fell apart? An engineer. Okay, yeah.
In manufacturing, building factories through Southeast Asia, which is work I loved. And funnily enough, it was nearly always with men.
Yeah, wow. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So I got to see my own and their struggles, and I'm a good observer. And I started having conversations with people. I went, oh, you too. And then it was like, oh. So I joined my first men's group and then realised similarities. Then went to my first men's gathering in 2012. 100 blokes turned up, Gold Coast, hinterland in Australia, in Queensland, 3-day weekend. And that was the impetus to get off my ass and write the book in the first place.
Amazing. If you imagine that you did stay on that path and you continued to, you continued to have success in your career and you just kept going down that exact path, what would the version of you sitting with me right now be talking about? What would you be like? What would your body language be? What do you envision that version would be?
I'm not sure I'd be here. I certainly wouldn't be a parent. And I wouldn't have had that amazing life experience of raising two, 23 and 17 now. And they're both fine young men, really balanced in their capacity for what I call heart and backbone. They've got good boundaries, they've got a sense of selves in the world. They've got a great cohort of mates and girlfriends. I think I'd be either one of those boring, brittle, OCD, old men, one way or the highway. Nowhere near where I might have died an early death.
Pretty profound, isn't it?
Yeah, and that would have been from dis-ease, because my psychology at that age was in my 30s was starting to surface, and the good old human shadow will have its day. The bits that we try to deny about ourselves, the shadowy parts that we don't want people to know about, if we don't embrace those, then we don't embrace ourselves. If we don't embrace ourselves, my view, and I had a whole conversation about this 2 days ago, is how can we be authentic leaders if we don't know who we are?
Can't. And that's a scary thing. The people running bloody countries, people running billion-dollar organizations often haven't done that work.
No. One of the questions that was asked, one of the guys ran a process, my co-facilitator, we brought content to the week and he was running a process and it was on, vision, mission, purpose. I've done a lot of work around that. But the thing was, what would you like to see in the world? And one of the things I realized is one of my biggest beefs is I don't listen to the news, but I know what's going on in the world. And it doesn't matter where you look, whether it's Gaza, Ukraine, Israel itself, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, doesn't matter where you look. I am still, now that I know what I know, I am still at a loss how some person, doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter what country they're in, can direct other people to go kill people they don't know and the collateral damage from those things can be someone's children. And within that context, they're just written off as collateral damage. And I think if we as a human species could just for a moment take a step back and see that for what it is, that could be my kids, that we would be absolutely mortified. And yet our capacity to be violent as a species to that degree, at least to put a caveat around, at least in the old days, if I had an issue, I'd go to a field somewhere, you'd be on one side, I'd be on the other, and we'd have some hand-to-hand combat, and one of us might not survive. But that was like, they'd line up. There's 200 guys on that side and 200 guys on this side, and they just go for it. And
you got it out of your system.
Yeah, we'd be taken from our village. We'd go to camp. We'd spend weeks possibly training to get battle ready. We'd then go into battle facing our enemy. If we survived, fantastic. We'd then go back to camp. We'd then do a debrief from the horrors that we'd experienced, to process, I guess, what we now know as PTSD. And then we'd go back to our village so we could put our children or our grandchildren on our lap and get back to some level of normality. What did we do in Vietnam? We took doctors and lawyers and things through conscription off the streets, and we dropped them into a completely artificial environment. We fed them substances so they could cope with the atrocities that they were experiencing and committing. And then we plucked them off the street and put them back in New York. And, Tom Cruise, Born on the 4th of July type stories.
Yeah.
And more Vietnam vets have taken their own life than died in the Vietnam War.
That's crazy as well.
Is it any wonder? And we call that progress.
Well, it's just, exactly. Humans are equally incredibly intelligent and just incredibly stupid, because all these advancements, it's crazy. You look at things and you're like, how on earth did it go from cavemen to, putting rocket ships out into space and building AI and everything we're doing? Yet we make all these advancements and we're taking ourselves further away from our actual core needs and, the basics of what we're meant to have, community, connection, like empathy, like these basic things that we're meant to have. We've moved ourselves further away. So then we try and build a new innovation to bring that back, when at the end of the day, we just need to, it's simple. We don't need extra things to do that. We need to actually remove to be able to do that.
Exactly. In 1958, the famous psychologist Carl Jung wrote a book, very small, about 100 pages, called The Undiscovered Self. I've given it to several people to read. One of my mates read it and he said, it's only 100 pages. I'll read it in a weekend. I went, no, you won't. You'll read a paragraph and you go away and you'll chew on it for a week. It took him 6 months to read 100 pages. I'm going to paraphrase in this, but what Jung said was, when we believe only what our consciousness tells us, in other words, we deny our unconscious capabilities and capacities, he said we add stupidity to iniquity, and then we project our own capacity to do evil things onto the other. We make them bigger than they are, and then we justify tearing them down. I read that paragraph just as the US went into Iraq in 2003 and tore down the statue of Saddam Hussein. And I remember reading it and going, wow, here it is being played out on the world stage. There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein was a bad bastard. But when you look then at how many Iraqis died as a result of the invasion and the next 20 years, which was, poorly managed and poorly planned and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Here it was once again being played out on the world stage. The book was written in 1958.
Well, yeah, it seems like the world, no matter what generation we're in, there's the same patterns in different times, different sort of environments, but we go through the same cycles of patterns, really. And we think we're evolved, but I think human nature, the same things get repeated.
Well, in the old days, if you were the king, you led the battle. Now you sit away from the battle lines.
Sit behind with the button or something.
a guy or a girl sits in a control room in Germany
Mm.
and flies a remote drone over Afghanistan and kills people that they don't even know because there's an order to bomb this house or this compound or whatever it is. And in fact, a lot of people don't know, but when James Cameron wrote the original movie Avatar,
Mm.
the mechanization at the end and the humans in the suits and all that sort of stuff, it was actually James Cameron's protest against the mechanization of war. That exactly that as someone can sit in a control room playing what they consider almost to be a video game, totally disconnected from the act they're about to commit because they're under orders. And my view is, why do we send young people to fight old people's wars? You want to go to war with a country? We'll get the two leaders, put them in a ring, let them have it out. One of them will die, and then the countries just go back to what they were doing.
Be a good way to clean up some of these, political messes that are happening. That'd be good.
Instead, we rally people that have still got their entire lives ahead of them, and we lose thousands and thousands of young people every year at the behest of some old man or woman going, "Oh no, we disagree, and we're going to go and invade this country." How about you go invade them?
Yeah. And is it a product of? Do you think it's a product of the fact that we're so desensitized now because of overexposure to everything? In pop culture, we're watching movies where on YouTube we can access anything. We can watch, you could look up someone getting murdered right now, getting beheaded, whatever it is. So then we know, the stuff in Gaza, how bad it is. We know what's happening, but we turn a blind eye, because we're like, oh, but it's almost like we can convince ourselves it's not actually real because we're not the same as we see other stuff online. We're not actually privy to it in our day-to-day life. We're not physically seeing it, so then it gets desensitized.
Yes, and in fact, interestingly enough, there's an Australian TV commentator. You'd know him. His name was Andrew Denton.
Oh yeah, of course.
And he used to have a TV program called Enough Rope.
I remember
that. Fabulous interviewer who got under the skin of quite a lot of people and got them to really open up and talk. And he flew to the States and he interviewed Bill Clinton. And he says to Bill Clinton, "What's the greatest regret of your presidency?" And of course, the average watcher's going, "It's got to be Monica Lewinsky." And Clinton looks down the barrel of the camera and says, "Rwanda."
Oh, wow.
And Andrew Denton's like really puzzled. "What do you mean Rwanda?" And Clinton says, 1 million people died on my watch in the Rwandan genocide, and we stood back and let it happen. So as human beings, we have a propensity for violence. And to be honest, I don't see how as a species we can dig ourselves out of the hole that we're digging. Because year on year, we seem to be getting more accustomed to violent solutions.
Yeah. And technology advancements.
Yeah. And every number of years, the various countries, the military-industrial complex has to test their new weapons. So they'll start a proxy war somewhere, whether it's Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq. Oh, let's test our new weapons of mass destruction and see if they work, tick.
That's shocking. Yeah, I think it's kind of scary when you think ahead, but I think things will change in micro levels, and I think the only way, the stuff we're talking about here can change is people need to learn to take that radical personal accountability to make changes within yourself and see that as a chance to give back to the world and then become a leader where you can then pass that on and help other people do the same thing for themselves. Because I think we're sitting there a lot of the time waiting for a magic solution. Or I see with my company, a lot of the people, they're wanting to find help to just get, that magic bullet, but then they're not wanting to confront the fact that they're actually going to have to learn how to show up for themselves every day, and it doesn't end, but you'll change your life. And once they go through that process, it's night and day. They're like, it's the best thing they've ever done in their life. But to get to that point, it's hard.
And unfortunately, Nick, people don't understand there's a subversive reason why that doesn't happen. Because in the same book, Jung describes what we know today as mob consciousness. If you see a bunch of people suddenly it starts, and then they're smashing windows in department stores and looting, stealing stuff. If you took those individuals before that, pulled them inside and said, would you ever break into a shop window and just steal a television? Shit, no. And Jung argues that in order to navigate that mass mob awareness, mass mob consciousness, you have to be as well organized internally within your own house, within your own foibles and weaknesses and strengths and capabilities as the mob itself. Because he says if you're not, you have no choice but to join the mob for compliance.
Yep.
And so if we don't do our inner work to clean up and own our own shadowy aspects, Hitler did it in Germany. It took a whole country into a collective shadow. So we've seen Stalin, Mao Zedong, we've seen Pol Pot. We've seen what happens when leaders tap into their culture's collective dark side, as it were, and use that to their own ends. And that's where fanaticism and all that stuff ultimately comes from. And so my view is that the only way that we can evolve as a species is individually. We have to do our inner work. We have to raise our consciousness. We have to become more aware of who we are, what we think, how we got there, what are our beliefs, what are our values, and only then can we start making more objective decisions about what we separate in our own value system as right and wrong.
Yeah. And as you're talking about there, with these leaders that can, like a Hitler that can inspire this entire movement through one person, we can do the same in a positive way if we start getting leaders that are more personally evolved, empathetic, they've done that work.
That's the only way we can evolve as a species.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners are men that are very stuck, as we've been talking about. What did it feel like for you when you were in that period when everything fell apart, when you said you contemplated suicide? What did it feel like? And what if you were just going to give one piece of advice to any man listening to this that feels stuck, doesn't know where to go, doesn't know what to do, but just is desperate to make a change? What would the most simple first step be, for that person?
Either read a book, join a men's group, do something to get yourself into a circle of other men. You don't have to speak. Most of these groups, you can literally go there to sit and listen. And once, as scary as it might be, and I get it, as scary as it might be, if you go to a good group where the rules are that you can simply sit and be, and then you immerse yourself in that space, and if it's well facilitated, you'll suddenly start to relax into the space. And after one or two sessions like that, you might suddenly find that you actually put your hand up and say something. My name's John, and I'm really struggling with life right now. Nothing else needs to be said, but simply externalizing those words and hearing them come back into your own ears can be the liberation that you need, that first step of the hero's journey to embrace all of who you are and accept all of who you are. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's going to be as painful as hell along the way, but the liberation and sense of freedom that you'll feel at the end of it is like nothing I can explain. It's the most extraordinary thing to not feel like you're a victim of life itself.
Well, I think that's great advice. And what, just for people to learn, to understand what it does feel like when you're in the depths of that, what was the feeling like? Did it feel like you just were trapped and there's no way out? Yeah,
the hole was so deep. There was not even light at the end of the tunnel. It was as dark as could be.
So we need that reminder that and I've been there as well. It feels that way, but I think, and that's the gift of experience that then needs to be passed on to people when they're in that, because you can't really believe that till you've experienced it, but you at least need to know that if you are in that, it's not there. There's actually always help. Things will always get better.
And the phrase, "This too shall pass."
Yeah, exactly.
It's like climbing the mountain in the dark. If you put one foot in front of the next, you might not see where you're going. You might be in a blizzard. If you stand still, nothing's going to change. If you put one foot in front of the next, you might not see the result. You still might be in a blizzard, but if you put the next foot in front of that one and the next foot in front of that one, eventually you're going to get through the blizzard.
Thank you for sharing all of this, John.
Thank you, Nick.
We finish every episode with closing questions. So these can be whatever comes to mind for you.
Sure.
First one being, when was the last time you were vulnerable?
Yesterday morning.
There you go. And I guess in this conversation, you've been vulnerable as well.
Well, yesterday was closing ceremony and thanking the guys for being there and talking about my own journey to get to that place. And yeah, I was in tears. Such a beautiful moment.
Oh, amazing. And again, that's behavior as men we need to see that is not weakness, it's actually strength and it's healing. So it's very important. If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Eat the shit sandwich and get on with it.
I like it. Yeah. I would give myself the same advice. I'll take that. It's pretty good. Do you have any regrets in life?
No.
Because they've informed this whole path.
I've been through periods of deep regret and suddenly looked at that and went, well, that's no point because I can't go back and change it. And it's just soaking up energy. If I feel guilt, I can sometimes redress that. But regret is going to do absolutely nothing for me. Learn from it, move on. And I wouldn't be where I am today if that hadn't happened.
Yeah, absolutely. What does it mean to you to be happy?
Feeling at peace in my own body, in my own heart, and knowing that I am actively involved in an act of service.
Yeah, I love that. Well, final one on the topic of what we've been talking about. What does it mean to you to be a man?
The capacity to both create and implement, the capacity to have both a heart and a backbone, and the capacity to carve my way in the world at no one else's expense.
Love it. Well, thank you, mate, for sharing all of this. I've taken so much out of it, and I know our listeners will as well. So I really appreciate you making the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick, and conversations like this don't drain me, mate. They light me up.
And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and any topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or send me a DM. Your feedback is always appreciated. It would mean the world to me if you can subscribe to my channel, leave a like or comment, share it with your friends. It makes a world of difference. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps me to get this show bigger and better and bring on the guests and the production value that you ask for every single week. I couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much.